They said I'm 65, so
Really? Okay.
I'm just confirming that I'm 40.
I guess 65 is the new 16, but okay. Well, 40 is a good year, isn't it?
Yeah.
From all
they
that
said life begins at 40. Let's see.
Do let us know how that is. And even as we're able to laugh a little bit, of course, in celebrating you, yesterday national prayers took place, and this took place on the backdrop of, in the face of 16 girls who died in a terrible fire incident. And we're going to go into some of those things this morning. Quite a number of things in terms of looking at how things are playing out. But Dennis has taken us to the Gambia this week.
Okay.
So in the Gambia, they conduct the election using glass pebbles. So they use glass pebbles to elect.
Glass pebbles?
Yeah.
They don't have ballot papers?
No.
Nope.
What's their population?
2.8 million.
Yeah, that's like Nairobi.
It's half of Nairobi.
Yeah, it's half of Nairobi. But another thing now that I'm assuming you'll be celebrating your birthday, right? So they have over 600 species of birds. So if you love bird watching, that's the place to be.
600 species?
600 species of birds. So yeah. But let's go to the proverb. However black a cow is, the milk is always white.
Where? Umesema shetani ni shetani.
Wow.
Akiwa shetani mlight, bado ni evil. Akiwa light skin, akiwa black skin, spirit ni ile ya ushetani. I think that's my understanding of it. Yeah.
Broke it down simply, yeah? Well said.
I mean, considering everything that's going on a serious note, it's one of those things where it's unfortunate, and this is why people don't have any trust in any of the politicians. Yeah, because there's an assumption that, as you have said, however, black the cow is, the milk is still white. Yeah. So, that would be my interpretation of it.
Well said, well interpreted.
Yeah.
Indeed. So, I mean, there's still a lot of heaviness, as it should be, over the clouds of the country at the moment. And there's just something that it's just not sitting right.
It feels like there's a spirit hovering over this country.
What does that mean?
To me, there are people who live life not understanding the spiritual realms. I have been those kind of people until the recent years. And there's a whole other spiritual realm of things happening. And people call me crazy or insane when I say that we have a regime that is cultic. And for me, when I look at what's happening and how things are being, how the leaders of this regime are reacting to the things that are happening, it is a confirmation that we elected a cult.
That's really serious.
That's how I feel, though.
In those, in that,
and people call you crazy at the beginning until when they start realizing it. You know how they say first they'll call you crazy, then So I know that there's a lot of people thinking, this one lost her mind. No, I didn't lose my mind. I experienced and had the unfortunate privilege of witnessing a lot of things that shouldn't happen, and a lot of what I would call cultic behavior. Yeah.
If that's the case, then a national prayer breakfast then kind of makes sense, isn't it? Because if you're talking about there needs to be deliverance and prayer, then that makes sense.
Indeed, if indeed we were praying to God.
Everybody, people congregated at the prayer breakfast yesterday. The day before, when the First Lady met, a number of women's groups, she said that I feel that we need to pray specifically for the months of June and July.
Let me ask you, what's the reason why we go to specific churches? Why don't you just go to any church? Why don't you just go to any gathering? After all, it says where two or more are gathered, God is there. Because there are some people who gather in the name of God, but we know that is not really the agenda. There's a whole spiritual life out here. And when I look at how the things were conducted during the prayer days, there was a lot of mockery, The politicians were joking a lot around things. The president barely took the issue of the breaking news of the fire seriously. He mentioned it as a by the way towards the end. the leaders in that space almost appeared as if what has happened is a very small thing. It was like, oh, the wind has blown, and okay, let's continue with our activity. They went ahead to eat and dine. It almost reminds me of that picture in the Bible where was it Jesus entered this space where people were dancing and eating and dining, and he was like,
"What are you guys doing?
What are you guys doing?" It felt like that yesterday. Like you have been chosen to leadership to take care of these people, and terrible things are happening to these people who you're supposed to take care of, and you are completely unawares. You're not there. It doesn't move you. There was no, you couldn't even feel. In fact, you would have to walk into that room and say, guys, can we stop celebrating or doing whatever we're doing, because 16 very innocent lives have been lost.
Gloria, I was looking at the National Prayer Breakfast as it was happening, because we had a split screen. So we had parents who had shown up to collect their children or collect the bodies of their children. And here we have the National Prayer Breakfast that many had even suggested, cancel it. There are urgent pressing matters to address right now as the leader of the country. And there's another side that was saying, based off the presidential protocol, that was not to be discussed, the reason why the president did not handle it. And one asked the question,
what do you mean presidential
at what
protocol?
Point then does protocol become important than the people you're leading?
It's, you know what it is? It's just a leader who's inhumane. He's not, honestly, I want to say he's not a human being. That's what I want to say, because I can't even see myself as even a senator getting into dressing up and going for a prayer day, especially if it means that my presence in a different place, which I could actually accord my presence to these parents. I don't know. I just feel like there's this. We have normalized insensitivity. We've normalized evilness. Because let me ask you something. People are saying, oh, whatever, now you're in opposition, so everything that this government does is wrong. That's not the case. During Dr. Fred Matiang'i's regime, there were more than 100 fires in a very short period of time. I think that was 2016. Yeah. And there was this, it was almost like a culture of when the students were unhappy, for whatever reason, they would just light up a fire. And several things were put into account. And actually, the government of the day then tried to address it in a way that it was a concern. You remember that's the time when paraffin was no longer, they stopped selling paraffin in jerrycans because the assumption was that people are using it for arson and all these other illegal activities. So there was actually a concern. You could feel the leaders at that time being concerned, like, what is going on? I remember Dr. Fred Matiang'i he went before the parliament, both houses, the National Assembly and the Senate, and they were interrogating what could be the problem and all these things. And at one point, what was appeared, people actually said that he's insensitive because he said we have to come down hard on the people who are starting the fires, including the students. At that time, it was a big conversation because they were saying, oh, why do you want to come down hard on those students? And he said, because listen, arson is a very big criminal activity. Whether you are a 6-year-old, whether you are a 10-year-old, whether you're a 20-something-year-old, arson is arson. And he put his foot down. And then the Moi Girls incident happened. And why I want to draw attention to the Moi Girls incidents, the Moi Girls fire tragedy, let me not call it an incident, fire tragedy, is because I want to try and have Kenyans remember, when you have a government that cares for you, or at least even a cabinet secretary that cares for you, these are some of the things that they would do. Number one, it was not showing up for photos. If you can pull up the clips of Dr. Fred Matiang'i going to Moi Girls, people had seen this guy as a tough guy, a no-nonsense person. And when he was at Moi Girls, he almost broke down in tears. It was the first time people felt that Dr. Fred Matiang'i was a human being, because they had been seeing this very abrasive person, a no-nonsense person. And then, the Moi Girls fire tragedy happened, showed up, and it broke his heart. And we can see it from how the images from that day. And then it's not only just about that. That particular case defined it. In fact, after the Moi Girls fire tragedy, you can see the decline of all the fire tragedies in the schools, because the cabinet secretary and his appointing authority, the president of the day, said, no, enough is enough. We have to hold people accountable. Investigations began. The head teacher was the matron. About 15 or something students were taken in. There was this huge seriousness on what they are going to do. And eventually, the student that was responsible for starting that fire, whether the intent was to kill or not to kill, the student that was responsible was jailed. The leaders who had showcased what you call negligence in terms of duty of care, they paid for it. The other students who were part of the incitement and everything, I remember even there was a conversation of their parents having to pay for some of the damages of the school. And after the Moi Girls fire tragedy, I want you to go down and look at now the record of what happened. The fires just stopped. Not stopped, but declined. Now, this is what I keep saying, is that yes, accidents happen. And by the way, this is what I have. In fact, as I was coming here, I was telling my driver, those innocent students did not die because of a fire. Those innocent students died because they were locked in. They could not escape. The emergency exits were locked. All forms of, they were in prison. That's why they died. They couldn't get out of because I understand, and I could be wrong, we are waiting for the report to come out, but I understand this was not late in the night. The fire started, it's not like it was dead in the night. So I just think that until we have leadership that, first of all, is human, because I don't think these people are human. Until we have leadership that is human, that understands what Kenyans are going through, and that are able to showcase that their leadership is really about the people of Kenya. We can be talking about all sorts of things, but we will end up importing Ebola, for instance.
We're going to go to that we're going to go to that in just a minute.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you say this, because when we look at the multi-layered issues around this fire in schools, because as far back as you can go, there have been fires in schools, and it's been unrest. And why we are saying this is, it's not just us who look at the pictures of the day or hear from students. There were task forces that were set up, headed by committee chairpersons, to find out what happened and what could be the reason why some of these things occur in the manner in which they do. They found the reasons. Not only did they find the reasons, but they made recommendations as to what was to happen, so that we then see this goes away. It might interest you to know that not some, all of the task forces and the reports that they put together thereafter and the recommendations that they brought forward, all of them are collecting dust on, I don't know whose grandmother's shelf.
Yeah.
So, does it show a seriousness to actually deal with this thing, or then is it just a photo op for us to come and stand around and cry when this thing happens and we can do something about it?
Every time you hear a government entity saying, we are forming a task force, forget about it. When you just hear, or a working group, forget about it. I keep saying we sincerely do not need any other policy document. We do not need any other task force. We have everything that it takes. Our problem is we don't like to implement. Yeah. By the way, all those task force and working groups and whatever, they all at one point contributed to a 78-page manual of what they're calling standard safety guideline. When the Hillside and the Russia fire tragedy happened, I personally reached out to the cabinet secretary. This was 2024. And I said, you know what? I've gone through, because we discussed it in Parliament at some point. So I said, I've gone through the 78-page document of the safety, standard safety guideline. Yeah. And I said, But how do you expect this to be implemented? There's no, it's not direct. What it needs, it needs someone to sit down and turn it into a 2-page checklist. So that from the 2-page checklist, it is disseminated to all the schools, because the 78-page policy document on guidelines talks about a lot of things.
Yeah.
But, for instance, if you're going to say how to keep this space, by the way, I have a background in critical facilities. That's why I'm very, this is like my area of expertise. If you're going to say we're going to keep this space safe, first you have to think about things, accessibility, the environment in terms of even just the air that you breathe in, whether it's the air conditioning, whether it's what. You're going to look at all sorts of things down to the flooring, pests, if there's any, things like that. But also you're going to look at disasters. And disasters are not only fire incidences. You can have floods, you can have terrorist activities or attacks, all sorts of disasters. That 78-page manual actually talks about all these things, including droughts, floods, fires, all those things. The problem is, you take a 78-page manual and you share it to all the schools. And then you task the board of management, together with the leadership of that school, which is the headmaster, to say, now there is your 78-page manual. We expect that you comply. Everyone will have their interpretation of accessibility. Everyone will have their interpretation of accessibility. And even if you go down to say that the access doors must be this big and they must open outward, and what must they be made of? Because if they are made of metal, it doesn't mean, then even if they are this big and they open outward, if I'm going to touch it, when there's a fire, it's hot, I can open it. So there are so many other ways, and I think, and let me tell you something, this is not only happening in the schools. This is a tragedy that can happen anywhere, including our port, the Kenya Port Authority, which does not even have a facilities management team. Does not even, can you imagine a critical facilities like the port does not have all these things you're talking about, fire safety, forget it. So when I looked at that document, I remember during the Endarasha tragedy, I told the cabinet secretary, why don't you task your team there, the directors of those various departments, to sit down and interpret this into a 2-page checklist, so that the checklist is now disseminated to the schools.
What would that checklist look like?
It would look something.
So if we say we have a room,
no, it would look something like this.
Do not have more than 20
beds.
It
would look something like this. You start access points.
Yes.
Yeah. Then you say 5 doors or 2 doors or 3 doors. If you go to a place and you're like, if it's this big square meters and it only has 1 door, then you have not complied.
Exit.
Yeah. It would look like this: windows, no grill, made of this, made of that. It would look like this. If you have more than 2-story dormitory, these are some of the extra things that you have to put. On top of that, it would also have, forget the usual fire extinguishers and that, first aid kits. Yeah?
Fire blankets.
Fire blankets. Okay, forget even just fire. Now let's talk about an active shooter. Who says that's not going to happen in this? Who says that is not a scenario? That can be a scenario. Forget that. Let's talk about a knife incident. So, and by the way, when you read the 78-page document, it's very comprehensive. So it is actually easy to bring it down to a 2-page checklist, which we can start by there. And then, the thing with critical facilities or facilities management is, with time, you can fine-tune it. Something happens, you realize, we never really thought about lighting, or we never really thought about, this. Or in the Mount Kenya region, this is also what we need to add for all the schools, because the weather is different. In the Asal region, because it's more prone to other disasters, this is what it should look like. But you can't sit as a Ministry of Education with all these schools and say we have a 78 policy document and we hope everyone to implement it. What are you doing? By the way, during Dr. Fred Matiang'i's tenure, he had the field officers go out actually to the field to check for compliance. Field officers during his tenure in the Ministry of Education were never sitting in the office because they had things to do. If you are a field officer covering a certain county or a certain region, you have to go and check compliance on safety, compliance on head count, how many students per class, compliance on this extra, extra fees that people are put. There was a lot of compliance that they were doing. So the field officers had things to do. such that by the time an incident, a fire or any other incident happens, it is easy for them to say, I was there 3 weeks ago. This is the report I gave, and I can tell you that the negligence is on this point. But we don't have that. So now what we have, first of all, with this regime, is we have a one-man show. First, you have the president who wants to run everything down to the toilet in the school. Yeah. Then you have the cabinet secretaries who are oblivious. Very oblivious of anything that's happening. I mean, we saw the cabinet secretary of education yesterday. He looked like a flower girl. He looked like Murkomen was the one in charge of the press conference. Murkomen from Interior, who landed in a chopper, was the one now telling us. And they even turned a very painful moment. I was so disgusted by Murkomen. By the way, that guy. They turned a very painful moment to a sort of semi-campaign. Justice must be done. People were clapping. What are you clapping? What are you We have been conditioned to hate ourselves so much. We've lost our children. We are still at the site where the children died. And then we are clapping for a cabinet secretary who landed in a chopper on a 1 hour time difference. He could have driven there. And people were clapping. They were clapping. I said, now if you don't understand things in the spiritual realm, look at that. If that is not the devil. Because to me, that was something else. That you can come, spit in the faces of people who have gone through a tragedy, lost their kids, and try to make it a political affair in the sense that you're even giving this sense of, I'm talking, I'm here, the camera, clap for me. I was so disgusted.
Gloria, when you talk about those kids, many have been burned beyond recognition as we speak. I remember I was speaking to one of our colleagues there, and this was his word. It is harrowing to be here. Parents are devastated. They don't know what to say. And these are incidences that have happened, and we don't see heads roll. It is business as usual, And earlier we had a discussion about this, and we talked about we must be radical for things to move. Not just government, but even parents themselves must take this upon themselves to ensure that this code they understand. If the children are in these rooms, they go to these dormitories, because ask any parent out there who has visited where the children are sleeping, and many will tell you they've
not seen it.
They are not allowed to. They're not allowed to. Just how radical then must we all be?
But
fix this?
You can't blame parents and Kenyans, because when have you ever been in a toxic relationship? No, honestly, now let's bring it. When you're in a toxic relationship, you even forget what is normal.
Yeah.
You're so used to being beat down that when you lose your child in school and then a cabinet secretary flies in, you clap for him.
You clap for them.
So you can't blame the victims, because the victims here are literally, they're you can say traumatized. They've been in a long-term toxic relationship with their leadership. They don't even know what to expect anymore. People are even forgetting what their rights are. Parents have been reduced. Have you ever gone to a school, these schools, when they're doing the intake, and you see how parents are talked to and treated? That's what it is. It means we forgot to draw the line somewhere. We've gone so far out. We don't know where the line is, such that you can be told, drop your school, you can't go to where your child is sleeping, and you think it's normal, because that's how you are so used to this toxic leadership. So, and I mean, we have responsibility to some extent has to be put on the parents. And in fact, yesterday I was, because people have been very mad at my utterances on my social media pages.
Yeah, you went quite out, didn't you?
But the truth, you can't sugarcoat the truth.
Yeah.
You can't you want people to sugarcoat the truth, but then when the truth hits you hard, you are wondering why they are taking choppers and asking to be clapped for. You can't sugarcoat the fact that, first of all, when I hear people saying, don't politicize this is a political issue. Because a cabinet secretary is a political appointee. You understand? So when you start watering down institutions through the political appointees, it is a political issue. Because if we were just taking technocrats, we would not be talking about politics. Number two, budget allocations and even implementation of policy and framework is purely driven by politics, where we are in Kenya. You know, until yesterday, many people didn't even know that we had a standard safety guideline that already exists.
Yep.
But you see, because politically, they have refused to take charge and implement basic things that should be implemented. I was literally saying, if Endarasha, the principal of that school, would have been arrested and would have been in jail now. If the boarding master, whoever, would have been arrested and in jail, and all those people who are responsible, if they were serving time in jail, do you know that the boards of management of all the schools would be so terrified
that they would comply.
They would comply. Why were they not arrested? Why didn't anything happen in Endarasha? Because the political goodwill just... Do you know in Endarasha, the cabinet secretary didn't even go? The president didn't even go to the school. Actually, I could be wrong about the cabinet secretary, but I'm certain the president didn't even go. And 21 lives were lost.
Oh, that was the time of CS...
Machogo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know the Endarasha fire tragedy? You would almost think that it is a car that rolled and 3 people died.
True.
Even that task force that they put together, when did you ever hear about anything after that? So the seriousness with which that fire tragedy, which is the latest one, the lack of seriousness is what has made all the other schools. By the way, yesterday, I'm sure 110% there are children who are in a dormitory locked in and who dormitory with grills locked in and the matron gone away. Yesterday, I'm sure, I'm certain. Because people are like, and so what? Yeah, unajua hii ni maisha. Ajali ni ajali. I see people commenting on my Facebook page. Ajali ni ajali. Ulikuwa unataka president akue firefighter. Ulikuwa unataka. People just don't understand that it trickles down.
But what's it going to take? And I thought that, earlier as we talked about this, that it's the details that we overlook that actually cause the tragedy that we are then so heavy-hearted about today. That if, like, again, this 78-page document is whittled down into a 2-pager, and that we say, for all the schools in this area, if you have boarding facilities, this is what you must do.
Yeah.
This is not a beg or can you kindly. No.
Because
this
then,
is a standard to
then
set.
It's also easy to
hold
people
somebody accountable. And to say that we told you to do this. But then what is it going to take? Because you know what? The truth of the fact is that lamentations at some point are sweet. And I said to myself that I cannot imagine the impossible task that parents are having, not to even talk to anybody, that parents are having to impossibility to come to grips with this thing as they did for every other incident that occurred. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible to even think from this minute to the next. But at the same time, we have to feed on the hope that it will not happen again tomorrow.
But if
so
we don't,
what needs to happen?
If we
do we
don't,
need to shut down schools that are not compliant?
Yeah,
do
let
we
me
need
tell
to
you
say
something.
that the Ministry of Education needs to get their ducks in a row?
If as a country we are saying that we are not capable of ensuring the safety of our kids in boarding schools, then we need to ban boarding schools. Yeah. If we are saying as a country we are not capable of ensuring safety in those schools, then we literally need to say, okay, imetushinda, no more boarding
come
schools.
To school every
Kila
day.
mtu akae nyumbani kwao. Uko nyumbani, you don't get locked in. You don't get locked in when you're sleeping at home. No. Nobody locks you in there and then goes and leaves you in there. Why would you do it in another institution where your kids are sleeping? And it is as simple as, guys don't understand that leadership. When you have a thief at the top, everyone down starts stealing everything. When you have an inhumane person at the top, everyone down starts doing the same thing. When you have a leader at the top who doesn't take a fire tragedy that has taken the lives of 16 people seriously, that he goes to Safari Park to drink tea and purport to pray, then everyone down there is like, siyo kitu ilifanyika imeisha. Do you know, if you go through that safety guideline, the 78-page document that I'm telling you, it even tells you, besides fire extinguishers, how there should be floor plans of, sensitization of the students, understanding, this is the entry, this is the exit, this is where I can hide in case of this, the mapping out of that. It has drill sessions. How many schools have done drills? drills. And the frequency of how many times you should do it, and, who should be in charge. It has many things, including whistles, because, and torches in case maybe you can't shout far, whatever, But then there's a principal right now sitting and looking at it and saying, hatuna pesa. Lakini cabinet secretary ataland na chopper. Iyo chopper tu ililand hapo. Those are how many fire extinguishers for how many schools? Iyo chopper tu, because I can tell you back and forth costed him a minimum of 350,000 Kenya shillings. A fire extinguisher nowadays, if you get it in bulk, you can get it about 1,800, depending on the capacity. So even just him landing in the chopper is him not understanding, what, you think about it. And then this prayer day that we had.
Because it culminates in that, because we spent another 5 hours after this praying. And so what is it?
So even the prayer day, everything
to pray,
about it.
Gloria?
No, but you can't. Let me ask you, are you saying that if the prayer day was removed, this country will have no prayers? What is the worst case scenario?
If people actually pray, they could pray in their...
I listened to Ndindi Nyoro talking on austerity measures, and his spirit is in the right place. And I said to myself, do you know, if you just cut the budget of travel in Parliament to 0, do you know how much you save? Billions. For one financial year. Billions. And I'm sure it's over 2B. Just on travel. So when you're saying, we don't have money for capitation, we need to raise taxes, that's a lot of BS. I mean, if you look at what the president is doing, all these activities, that tent that they have up in State House, how much does it cost? Because they have a tent. Why do they have a tent in State House?
People are coming,
Why?
To,
Why? To do what?
To attend to guests.
Why?
Who come to
Why?
Teachers today, doctors tomorrow.
Why?
17 billion.
Listen, it is cheaper for you, President Ruto, to go to the people than the people to come to you in State House. That is an austerity measure. It is. If it's me, it's like me sitting in my house and saying, now I'm going to bring all my electorate to my house. I put up tents, buy sodas, put security protocols and what they're telling you, the reason why they couldn't cancel the presidents to the prayer and whatever. It is cheaper for you as an individual to go to the people. Yeah? How come Waikibaki never brought people to State House? Yeah? And how did that affect the budget then? So some of these things, even for schools, yes, the teachers now are saying, the principals, the biggest thing is who's going to pay for all these fire extinguishers? We're not allowed to put the cost down to the students and to the parents. That's, they should demand. We need to get to a place where we say, okay, in fact, no, we are demanding that until these things are done, capitation and this, we don't want anything else happening. When you see people taking photos saying, now they've gone for conferences, now you've gone for this conference, and now you've gone for Apple Agriculture What Seed Nini conference, where we come mbunge. Alafu? Even that, it's because there's no accountability, because there is no way. We are not given anything. From the corporate life when you travel, there's accountability.
Yeah.
Aside from just attending the actual conference, sometimes you even have sales targets.
Yep.
Sometimes you even you're told you must come back having made this collaboration with this company. There's a target, and that's the reason why even our embassies now in our high commissions and embassies abroad, we are just using them as people hanging around. But if those people had targets of the amount of business they bring in, but we are not intentional about how we spend our money. That's why we can now say, we're having a problem. We can't put fire extinguishers in schools because we don't have money.
How are Kenyans valued, Gloria? Because the policy is there. We have 75 pages that needs to be whittled down for everybody to understand it. Head teachers are saying, we don't have money to buy all this. But on the very same day where we have 16 Kenyans dying, we have a national prayer breakfast. And we talk about a national prayer breakfast that was turned to be political because what was said in that national prayer breakfast. Nikishindwa nitaenda home. Nikirudi mimi nitaendelea.
I'm glad that he has come to that realization that he's going home.
How are Kenyans valued by their leadership?
Again, I will draw comparisons to toxic relationship. It's the easiest. Hiyo ndio Wakenya wanaelewa. Ukikuwa na mtu mwenye ni mjinga sana hata unaanza kujiuliza, how did you reach here? It is the choices also that we make as Kenyans. Yeah, because these leaders are not imposed on us. Yeah. We choose them. We go out to the ballot and we vote for them and we say, this is the person that I want to come in. So it is a reflection of also how low we have stooped in terms of choosing our leaders. And for whatever reason, the motivation behind voting for that leader, we also need to have some self-reflection, deep self-reflection. Because remember, the president you choose will determine the cabinet secretary you have. There are people in this regime who could not even be receptionists.
What does that mean?
And I'm not saying receptionist is a bad job.
That's what I was about to ask you. I mean, don't hit on the receptionist.
No, I'm just saying there are people on the level of cabinet secretary and permanent secretary. Those are senior director management levels. Forget even receptionists who could not even be entry level program officers. You cannot qualify for an entry level program officer job, but suddenly you're sitting there and you're now driving policy and governance of a whole sector. How did that person get there? The president you voted.
You said they were political.
And that's why you need to also, during this time of campaign, look at Jimmy Wanjigi. Look at the people around him, because those are the people who are going to end up being cabinet secretaries. You understand? So, yeah. Because it's normally like that. Look at who else is fronting themselves for president. Look at Dr. Fred Matiang'i. Look at Rigathi Gachagua. Two things that you have to when you're thinking, yes, what does this person stand for? But also, what will his cabinet look like? Because as I've told you, this is the first government that has brought us completely incompetent people to director level, to cabinet level, to ambassadorial level. Remember the ambassador who was they nominated the nominee for I don't know which ambassadorial station.
It was DRC.
Yeah, who couldn't even express himself, but the president saw it fit to nominate them. That is the kind of president that you have, and not to say that all people should look the same but at least ask yourself, because honestly speaking, this is about capacity, skill set, ability, passion, and the spirit of patriotism. The spirit of patriotism is what we are lacking in the leadership. And it's because some of them they are already shocked. They can't imagine that they're in that position.
Now, when we talk, because this where the rubber meets the road is you have to ask questions around how citizenship is secured, which is the Constitution. If we're just going to say follow the law, follow the Constitution, the primary job of government is to secure the livelihoods of Kenyans through whichever mechanisms that they want to do that. Now, if we're going to segue, still remaining in the same pool that we're talking about now, if we talk about not being able to secure the lives of children in schools and doing the very bare minimum, basic, take care of people, make sure that they can eat, move from point A to point B, and then maybe they can have a little bit of something in their pocket. If you're unable to do that, would you reckon that there is some business that you should be playing when it comes to some international conversations, such as, for example, setting up quarantine centers to then take on America's sick?
No, import Ebola to Kenya.
One thing I was reflecting on my way here.
For money, by the way. It's not free.
One thing I was reflecting on my way here is the Cabinet Secretary for Health.
Yeah.
What does his track record look like in terms of legislation, in terms of what he stands for, in terms of many things? And if you go down that road, you will say no wonder. Because Duale is the same person who was involved when he was in Parliament as the majority leader in changing the Public Finance Management Act such that all the monies that were borrowed as a country for whatever project or reason, at that time used to go to central bank. Duale was involved in the legislation that said it doesn't have to go to central bank. It can go to a private account somewhere in another country.
This is true.
Yeah.
That is the person who is now in charge of the Ministry of Health. Money-driven, commercially driven, no spirit of patriotism, an individual who can change as a legislator, push and support an amendment that says if Kenya borrows money, it doesn't have to go to central bank and it doesn't have to be audited through parliament. And it can just go to a company somewhere and the president can do whatever they want to do with it. That is Aden Duale. They did it together with President Ruto that time. So now, considering that is the person you're saying, he's sitting, imagine in an office, let's just put a practical scenario, then he gets a phone call from the Secretary of State from the United States of America. And the guy says, what's up? I have 82 billion Kenya shillings for you for quarantine zones. Niaje unaweza kanisimamisha hizo mavitu kwa airport yenu. That's the person. Then you mentioned some crazy amount of money. And then you think now that person will be like, no, please. I love my country. I don't want Ebola in my country. That person will be like, hey, na percentage ni how much? Commission yangu ni ngapi?
But was it him, or was all of this based on the infrastructure of a relationship that Kenya has with the United States, whereby it was preconditioned,
it doesn't matter,
pre-agreed, where they said we can come to you tomorrow?
Offices are defined by office holders. Offices are defined by office holders. An office is not a wall.
So what you're saying, Gloria, is that he should have,
yes,
in his capacity as a CS, said, okay, hang on.
Yeah.
What about the health risk?
Not even in his capacity as a CS Health. As a Kenyan, as a patriotic Kenyan,
should have said what?
As a person who has the ability to contract Ebola.
Should have said, oh God, should have said what? Because let's look at it. So yesterday was Thursday. The day before that, which was Wednesday, and it was a public holiday, but it was interesting that we saw very quickly Ministry of Health put out this, brief.
They move very swiftly.
The PS put out a brief. The CS put out a brief. Office of I don't know who put out a brief and said this is what's going to happen, and everybody was like, okay, meaning what? The money story only started coming out yesterday in terms of the amounts, like how much then was going to be given. But the very thing here, it doesn't really matter how you look at the thing, that it doesn't make sense on the head of it. So what would be the sense? And we ask you this question specifically because you frolicked in these circles.
Yeah. And you see, I didn't survive.
And how? What kind of reasoning would then take place where we say, okay, America needs a solid, guys, let's do it? This
is how it works with this regime. How much? How much are we making? Then we work backwards. How much are we making? We are probably going to make 100 million. Okay. Look for the legislation that backs it up. Look for the team that looks for the moral thing. Then they work backwards. That's how it works. Yeah? When you saw the diaspora jobs thing, how much are we making? Work backwards. Justify it through a program. Justify it through Pesa Mfukoni. Justify it. Maybe 5 or 6 people die, but not everyone dies. They work backwards because how much are we making? And that's why you see when I say offices are institutions, and so first of all, institutions are made by offices. Offices are made by office holders. Office holders are human beings. If an office holder does not believe in certain things, you will quickly see that office just showcase it doesn't believe in those things. And that's why and by the way, this you can look at different offices that have been held by different people, and then you can see really an office is the office holder. Even just in the case of education, when we had Matiang'i there, people were saying, education, it's the office holder. Then you look at how now that has changed. Different, even within the judicial systems, it is the office holder. When we had Maraga, it was the office holder. He stood up for, that's the time when he nullified elections, because his spirit is a spirit of patriotism, and he really is not afraid. He's not a coward. Then you come and look at the other office holders and you're like, what's happening, So that's why yesterday someone told me, the problem with you argue you're personal. I'm like, there's no other way to deal with this regime other than being personal, because the people who are auctioning our country as quarantine centers are persons, and they have personalities that need to be dealt with on a personality level. I can promise you, there are certain people, if they held the office of Aden Duale, some of the things that you're seeing happening would not happen just based on who those people are.
So, do you see that he should have PS Oluga, PS Mudhoni, CS Aden Duale should have said public health protection is one of the things that they've said it before that we're very cautious about. But this flies in the face of what they've actually said before. We know that folks like the Katiba Institute have now taken this petition to the High Court and said that all of this business must be stopped. We're trying to make this. Is it? So are we saying that this thing,
the problem
is commercial in nature?
Yeah, it is commercial. The problem that maybe some of the people you've mentioned there are they're technocrats, hardworking Kenyans, but they have to follow orders from above. Yeah, that's something I wasn't able to do. That's why I was kicked out. Most of the people you've mentioned, by following orders from above means that they have to be negligent. They have to set their beliefs, their professional thinking, everything aside, and just follow what the president or the appointing authority says.
It flies in the face of logic.
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing is, in fact, this is what I want Kenyans to demand. If they are going to go ahead and set up those quarantine centers for the US because they are making money out of it, we want to demand the same way that the cabinet secretaries fly and land on the site with their choppers. We want to demand that the cabinet secretary for health, complete with the whole leadership that is appending their signature to this kind of arrangement, we want to demand that they move their offices to the quarantine centers.
Work from there.
Let them work from the quarantine centers. Yeah. So that, and if they can't work from the quarantine centers, let them tell us why they can't work from the. And then if they say, oh, because there's a risk, so why would you be putting our doctors, our security state personnel, our country at risk? If you think that this thing is okay, what you're doing is fine, say that the quarantine centers are going to be set up from this date to that date, and my office is going to move to the quarantine center. Go and sit there also.
Gloria, we're talking about individuals who are in those offices courtesy of Kenyans. They're not there to serve anyone else, but to serve Kenyans, 55 million people. And Kenyans are speaking, and no one can purport that they've not had Kenyans respond to the request by the United States to set up a quarantine center here. Yet we hear the PS speak, we hear the cabinet secretary, and we're like, whose brief exactly are you holding? Because Kenyans have sent you with a certain brief. Tell the Americans
holding the president's
no.
brief.
And
the
what
president,
does it get to
the president's brief, William
that?
Ruto's brief, has never been a brief from the people of Kenya in all sectors. He never speaks for the people of Kenya because Kenyans have been very clear. Walk outside and ask a Kenyan, would you like a quarantine zone set up in Kenya? From whichever cadre. They'll tell you, mnataka kutuleta Ebola, hatutaki hiyo maneno. So which Kenyans are they representing when they say that we have the capacity? Kenyans are not talking about capacity. You cannot even be talking about the capacity to handle Ebola when you cannot even reduce the maternal rates. I heard yesterday the president saying that they lost their child and that's why Linda Mama doesn't even exist. We don't even have the capacity to just safeguard our newborns who are healthy. But suddenly we have the capacity to deal with Ebola. We don't even have the capacity right now. Enter any level 4, level 5, any hospital, even a clinic, and see if they are going to hand you a mask.
The PS said you handled COVID. Amma?
Let me tell you, I don't like being the person that calls it out. But until this thing comes home, until you have lost a child in a fire, until you have dealt with something personally and asked yourself, why am I dealing with this thing? Then you draw it back to the leadership. That's why I hear a lot of the cabinet secretaries, the permanent secretaries, members of parliament talking as if when Ebola is imported, as if in parliament will be barricaded and the air there will be clean. As if they will go home to their barricaded homes. As if they will not go to the supermarkets and, they're so removed. I don't know whether you guys have seen it. When I told you this is a very cultic regime, a cultic regime means for you to see it, you also have to open your eyes. These guys are so removed from reality that sometimes you talk to them about basic things and they're like, they're not there. They're thinking about their next trip, their next 100,000 pay from State House, the next event they're going to have to get a microphone and say two-term. And then shortly, they'll be telling us, we are going to bury so-and-so related to this MP or even the MPs themselves. Then is when they'll say, the country is coming to an end, they panic. Because they don't imagine that it can happen to them.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And that's why it has to be personal. That's why it has to be radical.
That's why it has to be personal, and that's why it has to be radical. And anyone who tells you, wacha kuingiza siasa kwa hii kitu, mwambie, siasa is the reason we have William Ruto in office. Then is the reason we have his cabinet secretaries. Then is the reason his cabinet secretaries are giving orders from above to institutions to water down the institutions. By the time umesimama kwa bus stop, na umegongwa na gari.
It's politics.
It is politics.
Gloria Orwoba has been here with us this morning. Some things to think about. Really think about. Asante sana.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. 9 a.m.
The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM. This is the situation.